What's occurred in the last few years is the greatest threat to the separation of powers in the history of this government. I truly believe that. The vision that the President's administration have put forward in court, it's not that it's an outrageous vision, and it's not a new vision. It's just not our vision. We rejected the idea of an all-powerful president and an all-powerful leader. We didn't need it. We took a leap of faith together. But you know, the crisis of faith extends beyond Congress and beyond this president. Congress has just completely failed to exercise oversight. I testified recently in the House Intelligence Committee, and the chairman of the committee admitted that they hadn't done any oversight in about 5 years. But what's happening is we're living in the age of relativism. We're afraid. And when you're afraid, the Constitution becomes an abstraction. You know, I got to tell you, people like me continually make speeches about this, but it is just completely useless. Because the other side just talks about inherent dangers. What if a bomb goes off? What if they poison our water? And then we're left with just abstractions. When you argue about enemy combatant, it's dangerous for a president to say he can take a U.S. citizen like Jose Padilla off the street, strip him of his constitutional rights, bar him from access to courts or to counsel, and hold him indefinitely. It's a position that is completely incompatible with our nature of government. But it still remains an abstraction, because we hear all the time of who these people are. The president was just talking about it recently when he talked about torture. We always hear how bad they are, but we never hear about who we are. We don't have to be reminded how bad they are. You know, the plane that hit the Pentagon exploded behind my car. I had just passed by it. It blew up into my rear view mirror. One of my friends was on that plane. I don't have to be reminded how bad they are. But we never talk about who we are. What happens when we win? And we will win. We'll be anything other than victorious. Who will we be? We're having a debate whether to embrace torture. There's a debate of whether we will endorse torture like waterboarding. Who are we? So we talk about a redefining moment. It's not a redefining moment in the sense of something that came before. It's a new definition of who we are. It's not the definition that we agreed on. You know, one of my favorite movies is Man for All Seasons, you know, with Thomas More. And there's this great scene where Thomas More is with his daughter, and the king has asked him to sign over, to agree to the authority that he wanted to divorce the queen. And Thomas More believed it was wrong legally and wrong morally, and he refused, and for that he would be put to death. And his daughter asked him, please, why don't you just sign the piece of paper? And you can continue to influence the king. And he told his daughter that we all hold ourselves, the essence of ourselves, in our hands like water. And as you get older, and as time wears you down, you loosen your fingers. And then someday you look down and there's nothing in your hands at all. Well, I think that war has a way of loosening our fingers. If you look at our worst injuries in history, you'll notice one thing in common. They're all self-inflicted. It's not the worst in terms of deaths like Pearl Harbor, 9/11. The worst ones are the things we did ourselves. The acts of self-mutilation, sending Japanese Americans into camps, the Palmer raids, and the rest. We did it because we were afraid. We loosened up our fingers. And when we finally came to, we realized there was nothing left. We had become something grotesque. So I will leave you with this. And it's the scariest quote I can give you. And I spend most of my time desperately finding a way to scare people. Because the other side does it so well. You know, I mean, we have a two-party system, which is not enough. And we have one party running on, we're the less of two evils. No other ideas beyond that. And then the Republicans are running on, vote for me, or you'll die. That's basically where we are. But, you know, far scarier for me is not another attack. And I've got children and a wife, and we live right here in the Capitol. And God knows the scariest thing for me personally would be if any of them were harmed. But the thing that scares me the most is that my generation will give away the legacy that we got from the generation that came before us, and that we will untether our civil liberties from the system that was created in the brilliance of the 18th century. And so the scariest quote for me is what Benjamin Franklin said when he was leaving the Constitutional Convention. And there was a great crowd and the windows were covered. And these people went up to Benjamin Franklin, and this woman stepped forward and she said, "Mr. Franklin, what have you wrought?" And Franklin stopped and said, "It's a republic, madam, if you can keep it." To me, that's always been the scariest quote I've ever read, because it reminds us that it's ours to lose. That republic has within it the seeds of its own destruction. And if you just loosen your fingers, if you look the other way, if you do nothing, then we will be redefined. And we will no longer be the people we were. Thank you very much for having me today.